Hello everyone. This video is going to be a quick introduction to Kestra. Kestra is orchestration software that's relatively new, been around for just a few years now. Definitely not as old as some of the other orchestrators that are out there. If you're more of a reader, you learn by reading through the documents, just go on out here to kestra.io and you can click on the docs. I'll read through those. They're all pretty good. If you're not someone who learns by reading, or if you're looking just to kind of supplement that, then this video is for you. And also, the best way to learn something is by doing. So let's jump right in. But actually, right before we do that, I will point out you let developers know that you like what they're doing and to keep doing what they're doing by giving them stars on their GitHub repo. So from here on Kestra's page, you can just click star and go ahead and give them a star if you'd like. That really lets them know you appreciate them. I believe it moves them up too on GitHub somehow, makes it just easier for other folks to find. And one other thing I would like to point out, they have an invite to their Slack all over the place. So I am by no means an expert in Kestra, but they are. So feel free to go ahead and join their Slack if you have any questions, need help with anything having to do with Kestra, ask it there. There's very helpful, knowledgeable people that are really quick and thorough with their answers. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, let's jump right in. So if we go to the docs, we can go to getting started. And you see there's a Docker run command here. We're just going to go ahead and copy that and open up a terminal. See if I can make that a little bigger. Actually, it's probably going to be easier if I just make a directory called Kestra. Change to it and just start Visual Studio. And that was left over from when I had the same directory. Let's go ahead and just do a new file. And I'm just going to do this Kestra. Doesn't really matter. I just want to make this big enough so everyone can see. And actually, I'm going to space that out onto a few lines here, just so we see all the commands. And if you're not familiar with Docker, this one isn't too complicated. There are some things might be a little unclear, but we're just calling Docker saying, hey, I want to use the Docker program. I want to run a container using an image. I want to pull that image always. And once I'm done running that container, I want you to remove it off my system. I'm not going to restart it. Then we have -IT for interactive terminal, ensuring that if we want to connect to it using something like the terminal into bash, we can go ahead and explore what's in that container. The Kestra web server runs on port 8080, and so we're forwarding that to our local machine. The user we are going to run as in the container will be root, and we're going to mount the Docker directory into Kestra so we can run containers inside that container, but really using Docker on our local machine. And then we need to mount the temp directory as well, because that's used by Docker for intermediate layers and other things like that. And then this is the image. We are going to use the develop full, which gives us all the plugins being what allows Kestra to go out there and talk to AWS, GCP, among many others. And it does, Kestra as the program in the container does take a command or takes commands. And in this case, we're telling it to run the server local. And actually starting out, and for this demo, we're not going to need Docker. We will get to that here shortly. And just like that. So I am going to call that good. Go ahead and copy that. Open up a terminal here and just go ahead and paste that in. I will warn you, actually, the terminal will read that extra line. So let me just make sure. And if you are running this for the first time, the image is rather large, so it might take maybe 5-10 minutes, depending on your internet connection speed. So if you see it pulling the layers, I would recommend walking away, grabbing a cup of coffee, taking a stretch, just give it a few minutes. And then when you come back, you should see something like this. And this is going to be the ports on our local machine, but you notice it doesn't say local host. These are actually the containers here. The container IDs being, you open up another terminal, make that a little bit bigger. If I run Docker PS, we see that that matches down here. So to get to that, we just need to go ahead and do a local host 80. And here we are at Kestra. We are on the dashboard /welcome. Points to the same location. We do have an editor here, a code editor, which does come in handy. It is very similar, but not the same as flows. Flows is the area where you will be able to see your flows. And the container might be coming up still, which is why that's lagging a bit. I'm going to go ahead and give it a refresh. And I'm going to wait for that. And while we're waiting, we can just see that if we go ahead and run docker exec interactive terminal, just need the first 3 characters of that container ID, which is here. And what do we want to use? We'll use bin bash. And here we are in the app directory. You can see there is Kestra itself, where the plugins are kept, data, configurations, and let me go ahead and just open up another window here. If it's unresponsive after that, we could have brought it down, brought it back up. No harm, no foul. Okay, and you see we don't have any flows yet. That's to be expected. We just started it up. Executions, same. That is the area where we will see what has been executed. Logs, showing just the logs from our runs. Blueprints is definitely probably the most useful. And you know what? As I was going through learning this, I like to just make another tab. You've got blueprints here. And then you can see all the different plugins that are available. And we have so many because we use develop full, which says, hey, give me all the plugins. I want to experiment. I want to take the tour, see what's going on. Okay. So if we go back to editor, see if it loads up this time. All right. We have some instructions on how we can make our first flow. So it tells us to add a folder named scripts with a file called hello.py, and then just put this in here. I'm going to copy that, and I want a new folder, and I want to call that scripts. And inside there, I will create a new file called hello.py. There we go. And Control S to save that. And all right. Our first flow. Exciting. And if you're not familiar, this is YAML. I believe the convention now is just use YML. but it works in key value pairs, and the more you use it, the more you'll get used to it. I think that stands for yet another markup language. And hello.yml. And it looks like it populates kind of a message by default here. So to break this down, this here is the ID of the flow. And then this is going to be the namespace that flow belongs to. And then in that flow, you can have multiple tasks. In this case, we have one task of type log. And log, I expect, takes a message, and the message is given there. And so I'm just going to go ahead and paste what was given to us. ID is hello, namespace is test. It's going to run a script, and that script is going to reside in the folder scripts, hello.py. And notice I have a black circle up here, meaning this file is not saved. So Control S, there we go. And execute. Oh, well, the execution was a success, but let's see what happened. No such file or directory. This error message isn't that great, but if you've seen it a few times like I have, fear not. What we can do is we can go to flows, and I kind of went down the path to get this error. Sorry for the deception, but that brings us here to the flows area. And we do have some great stuff over here. The source is, well, our source code. We do have source and documentation, which is going to make a split window where we can see the documentation. We can see our code. And here is the helpful hint. Click on any element to see its documentation. You know what? Let's see what scripts are about. Okay. Well, execute a Python script. And that's what we want to do. Okay, we can define script. Looks like there's a pipe there, but something tells me that's just if I want to drop down and make it multi-line. We're coming down. And let's see. Runner. That sounds suspicious. Which script runner to use? By default, Kestra runs all scripts in Docker. And I removed the commands to mount the Docker directory. But it looks like we have another value we can use. So if we go ahead and use that keyword, runner, and I actually want to run this process. And I hit Control S. You could also do a save here. Before we move off this, I should point out we have source and topology, which is a split screen again, except for showing kind of the diagram of our flow. If we had other tasks here, let's see if it'll update quickly. And it's helpful to give us a warning saying, hey, that's not formatted right. And let's see. Well, let me get away with that. Yeah, so now we have, and again, there's the helpful Slack. Again, questions, issues, go to the Slack. Love it. Again, though, here's our flow. We have two tasks, hello and hello again. We need to run that twice. And to finish it off, topology, full screen of just the topology we saw. And source and blueprint, which just shows us the blueprints here. For me, that's a little crowded. And actually, I do apologize. That was probably pretty small. But now that we've gotten all that out of the way, let me just switch back to the source view. And let's go ahead and execute that. Oh, save it. I always forget to save it. And you could give your execution a key value, which would help with sorting later, but for just demonstration, messing around. All right. Everything's green. It must be good. All right. It was starting. You can see the command is passed there, where it's not trying to spin up a Docker container. And we can kind of prove that we're connected to the container here. If I run Python, indeed, Python is installed in Kestra, in the container running Kestra itself. So me back out of there. Just info saying hello from the editor, which our Python script ran and printed. Okay. And then again, we have metrics, no data there, output. We just get an exit code because we're not generating any output from that task. The topology, one task runs in 0.33 seconds. The logs we just saw. You can do trace to show more, error just to show the really bad stuff, warn, which, that's kind of, hey, look out. And then just the overview. I guess we've saved it 4 times. It was created about a minute ago. All right. So let's see here. Let me make this a little bit smaller just for a moment. And another thing I want to point out is there are namespaces. So right now I am in test. Why am I in test? Because I made a flow and I gave it the namespace test. You know what? You can come up here, and if you had more namespaces, you could switch between them. But you know what? I'm doing a demonstration, so I'm going to call this demo. I type in demo, and hey, look, I've got a namespace called demo. The same getting started.md. And not sure what that was, but I'm going to create a new file and just call this divvydata.yml. And it's been quite helpful. It gives my flow the name, which is the same as the file, and then just gives me a little task here. So spoiler alert, this is going to be a walkthrough of just simply downloading data, extracting its contents because it will be a zip file. In this case, the Divi data. And if you're not familiar, I'm in Chicago. Divvies are bikes that you can rent, use credit card, there's subscription, but they're all over the city, and that data is just publicly available and free. Again, we're going to download the zip file, unzip the files, and then move that file up to Google Cloud Storage. So to get started, let's see how we would step through this. So I'm not sure what to do here. Oh, did I switch those? So what I would do is I would go to Blueprints. Or I could always Google, but what am I looking to do? I'm looking to download a file. So if I just search for download, download a file and upload it to S3. Sounds really similar to what we're going to be doing, except for in this case, we're going to use GCP. And I'm just going to copy that. You could say use, and you could give it, demo, and then give it a flow ID, save it like that. And then if we go back to flows, we see the file there. But I kind of want to build this up from scratch. So, and you see the options here. We can export, we can delete, we can enable, disable. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Go back to my Divi data here and go to editor. And if I paste that in, Going to go ahead and I can't have two flow IDs and namespaces in a flow. So I'm going to do that. And to get our Divi data, I'm just going to do Divi bike data download. If we go out here and download Divi trip history, you can see I already have that in there somewhere. But if we right click and copy link address, which is what we're going to use to download it, I'm confusing myself by switching the windows there. So I will just put that here. We could hard code that in the task itself, but it's probably just better to do it like this. Depending on if you're building out bigger projects at some point in the future, you're probably going to want to use this input field. You know, it's pretty straightforward. What's the name of this input? It's the file URL, and that's how it's referenced down here. This was a little bit not hard, but I'm still getting used to this syntax here, where you kind of impute the value, treat it like a variable, but pretty straightforward. You know, I could call this Divi URL. Let's see, is it going to yell at me? No, but then I just call that Divi URL. Okay. And I'm just going to, wish I could make that a little bigger. I guess if I switch to the editor, probably would. As we make this a little bigger, I'll switch over, see if I can't make that a little bit bigger for you. So all we're doing is downloading a file. I'm going to save. All right. Let's see if it works. Green usually means good. All right. And it said it downloaded. And it downloaded to this area. And now is probably a good time if we switch back here and we look. Well, we've got, let's see what matches up here. We've got demo, Divi data. Let's check data. Kestra is a program, so that's probably not where it is. Oh, look, demo. And if you run Kestra in a Docker Compose file, which they also supply on their site, you'll get a Postgres database that's running that kind of keeps track of things. Here you can see we have a database built in. You can also run Kestra in Kubernetes, and there are other hosting platforms that help with that as well, just so you're aware. So we are in demo, and let's see, where did it say we went? Okay, we went to Divi data, executions, CD 2.8, and go to our tasks, go to download file. Oops. And there is our file. So one thing you need to understand about Kestra is it's stateless. It's not meant to necessarily share data between executions, between different flows. So it's assigning kind of these random values, and that's why we are accessing them with the variables that you saw with the output. Let's see if I can find that real quick. Flows. I guess we have not grabbed an output yet, but this inputs. So let's see that real quick, how we will use this file in our next task. So again, with blueprints, oh, just because I put extra lines in there. Okay, blueprints. And you know what? I want to unzip a file. And okay, so to access this file from this previous task, I'm going to do outputs, and it's going to be the name of the task, and it's going to be the URI. And I believe that if we went to our executions here and went to outputs, you see the download file. The name of that is URI. So that is why, try the editor, see if we can make this a little bigger. So here, download file. And again, just like we did up here with inputs, I could have said something like get div data, and then this here would need to be get div data URI. And notice there's a black dot here, meaning I have not saved this file. And let's see, if I close it, do you want to save changes you made? Sure, save. And I'll just pop that open again, and we can just execute. And that all looks good. If we go here, and that is going to be the unzip, we are going to check the outputs. There are two things here. This files dot Mac OS to the CSV, and then this files dot, and then the CSV that's contained in there. But if we go and we look at our data here, we see that is indeed what is contained in the zip file. Okay. So kind of the home stretch here, but we will need to do one more thing before we can upload this data to Google Cloud Storage, and that is have a way to tell Google Cloud Storage we're allowed to save it there and have some place to save it. Because we're running it in a Docker container like this, once we bring down this container, all of this data that we've been writing will be lost. But that's okay. What I will do is I will go to flows, and here's what we've been working on. And notice there's an import here. Well, once I click on a flow, there is an export here. And I can just click OK, and flows 1.zip. I guess I had some flows I exported before in there. And so let's go ahead and bring this container down. I was running in here. We can Control C, or we could have done a Docker container kill and then the ID of the container. And coming over here, I have a GCP project already. If you don't have GCP, you can sign up. If it's your first time with a new credit card, they'll give you like $300 in free credits. If not, I mean, if you already have one, honestly, we're going to upload one object to a standard storage bucket. So I don't know, it'll cost you less than 5 cents. guaranteed. So I have a bucket I already created here, and this is called Kestra bucket for test. But now I need a service account. And if you're not familiar with a service account is just like any other regular user account. Like when you log into your PC and it's got your name, except for, well, your account comes with certain rights, things you can do in a computer or on a network. A service account is the same idea, except for it is never made to be used to log into a desktop environment, to interact manually with different services, software. It's more if you're running programs, like say you're scheduled to pull data every morning at 1 a.m. or your computer checks for updates at a certain day. Well, that is using a service account that has rights to do the actions that it needs to do. Sorry for the tangent, but just in case you were unaware, and I'm just going to call this Kestra bucket pusher. And it's going to push things up to the bucket. You could do, well, we need cloud storage. You could do cloud storage admin, but those permissions are a little bit broad. As a best practice, you want to keep your permissions kind of as narrow as possible. Only give it permissions to do what it needs to do. And if we look here, storage object creator, objects are what things in a bucket, kind of regardless of what they are, movies, songs, text documents, CSVs, Excel, all considered objects. So that looks good to me. And go ahead and continue. Done. And let's see. This is the one I just made. And we want to manage keys. I'm going to create a JSON key. And this is what is going to allow me to put things into my bucket on GCP. How is Kestra going to talk to GCP? Well, it's going to do it through the plugins that we use in our tasks. So we brought Kestra down. Now I need to make a JSON file, and here I'm just going to, it might be different on your system, depending on if you're in Windows, Mac, a different flavor of Linux. I use Linux Mint myself, and I'm just going to call this mycreds.json. If you're in Windows, you could just use Notepad to do this, really. And once that's pasted in, Control X. And if I go ahead and cat that out, we see indeed my credentials are there. All right. So we could actually mount the JSON or the directory where the JSON is into the Kestra container and probably export a variable called Google Application Credentials. But Kestra's recommended way of doing this is using secrets. If you just look for Kestra secrets, this will go into that. They want you to base 64 encode it. I'll give you a bunch of nice commands here you can run to do that. And then depending on if you're using Docker Compose, you would give that env encoded file. But I'm going to show how to do that if you're just on the command line. And so along with these commands, we're going to add another one. It's going to be -E for execute. And by convention in Kestra, to use secrets, you prefix it with secrets underscore, and these are my GCP creds, and they're going to equal, let's see, what did I call that? Well, we need the $. We need to use base64, which is a program that, well, base64 encodes things. And just because I'm on Linux Mint and the base64 program is a little different, I need to do it like this. And spell it right really does help. That all looks good. And while that's spinning up, I'm going to see if I can show that here in another window. So if I go to my Kestra directory, there's my creds. So if I base64 encode that, and I need to do -W0. I think on Ubuntu you can just do something like -- input equals, and then your file name. But again, just because I made enough mistakes here, I know it's that. And then if I do test, this just says put everything that you would normally do to the standard output and put it in a file called test. And then I can go ahead and cat that out. The pipe lets me move that output and shove it into another program. In this case, I want to use base64. And instead of encoding, I want to decode. And indeed, there is my service account and all that good stuff. And if we go ahead and do a Docker PS, go ahead and connect to that container. And I want to use bash. And I'm going to echo. It is a variable now in this container. So what variable do I want to echo? And I should be able to, again, push that to base64 and ask it to decode and get my original JSON file. So hopefully that was informative and helped you understand what we were doing and wasn't a needless, wacky detour. Okay, let's go back to Kestra. And that's the documentation. All right. Here we are back at Kestra, but we don't have any flows. So that was why we went ahead and exported it. And it was the second one. And we can go ahead, and it was imported. Give it a good old refresh. And there we are. Okay. Let's edit it. And actually, let's switch back over to the editor. I just like having a little more space. I think you're able to see it a little bit better. Move that over. Make that bigger, too big. There we go. All right. And then again, if we open up another browser here just so we can see the blueprints. And upload GCP. All right. Let's just look for upload. Upload to S3, upload Google Drive. That's close. Download data and upload it to Google Cloud Storage. All right. Okay. So let's go ahead and we'll copy this back over. Could have kept the bucket name like we had in S3. If you saw when we were starting, it had, you know, the name just like this was. But this is a small enough little project. We can just do it like this. We can keep that name from. This is going to be a little bit different, as well as that bucket name, although that is very close to the one I'm using. So if we go back here and I go back to cloud storage buckets, and what we're looking for is this gsutil URI. And we're just going to go ahead and paste that here. And I think this was 2020-04 Divi data. And you know what? If we go ahead, and because we just brought this back up again, we don't have any of our runs. Again, black circle here, Control S to save that. Go ahead and execute. And if we look at unzip, let's go ahead and look at the outputs. Okay, so we will need that piece here because we need to grab that file from the previous task in order to use it in our final task, which will upload that data to Google Cloud Storage. All right. And, oh, that is getting started again. All right, here we go. And this is going to be a little bit different than what we used with the inputs, outputs here. This is actually going to be outputs of the unzip task. And we want to do file, and it's going to be the 2020-04 divitripdata.csv. And actually, as I'm looking at this, it will most likely fail, but I actually like error messages. It's nice to be able to get used to them. You see them enough times. Maybe just my opinion. It's really easy after the 5th or 6th time that when you see one, you go, I know what that is. So let's save, execute, watch it fail together. All right. Your default credentials were not found. And default credentials for your environment. Okay. That's not the error I thought I was going to get, but that's a good one too. What did I forget? I forgot to say, hey, this is who I am. This is how you know who I am. Again, we don't have the documentation here, but we can go to flows. We can go to this flow, our editor. And if we just go to documentation and click on this upload, well, if we go down, oh, look, there's service account. And we need a colon to separate that. And let's see if I remember the syntax here. It should be secrets, and then it's going to be GCP creds. I think we need a space there. Let's go ahead and save that. I think that's right. We'll find out together here. All right. Let me just look here for secret. I'm going to copy this, see if that was a spacing error. Let's go back to flows, editor. All right, here we've got one space. Oh, I did not need the double quotes. Oh, it did expect a string. Let's see here. That all looks to be right. It does want a string. So we see here it's a type string. It is dynamic. Does not say it's required. Let's see. Oh, moved it up one. That looks right, but there's only one way to know if it is. Let's try it again. Different length. Missing variable file on. Oh. Well, let's see if I can track that down. If we go back to the previous task and we go to output, notice it's files, plural. All right. Let's just make sure we got that in there. And if we go to editor and we look, we have file, not files. All right. Let's get our Google Cloud storage, and we see there's nothing in there. And we're going to go ahead and execute that. Pretty big file. And I'm not sure if that's doing a like a multi-threaded upload or a multi-part upload. Straight uploads to Google Cloud Storage can be a little laggy or just take a little bit of time. But I feel like that since it's not airing out, that's a good sign for us. And we see we have some logs as they're generated. It says the service account it's using and where it's uploading from locally and where it's going to upload to. Could be my internet. And you see here we can switch our namespace and it'll say failed, running, successes. Come on, I want my success rate up. Also, I should point out, there is a little bell here with news, all the updates on Kestra, some milestones, things like that. So those might be good to peruse. All right. I was kind of wondering if I wasn't on that page, if it would give me the pop-up. I never paid attention to it. You know, that nice pop-up that says success. I didn't see it, but maybe I was just refreshing it. And again, if you do need help, you know, head on over to the Slack. And let's see what we got. And there is our Divi data. You can go ahead and download it. And we do see that data is there. All right. So I think that's about all I wanted to cover in this video. Hopefully that gave you enough to kind of get started. It can be a little bit of an adjustment if you're coming from other orchestrators or other platforms in general. I like the YAML definitions. I think it's very succinct once you get used to it. Again, if you like the project, give the devs a thanks by going over and starring the project. If you need help with any issues, or if you just want to learn more about it in general, there's a lot of chatter in the Slack. It's nice sometimes just to pop in and see what people are talking about, topics that you might not have thought of, or technologies that Kestra connects with. It's really pretty neat. But that's all for this video. Hopefully you found it helpful, and I'll see you in another one.